The Agile methodology offers many benefits for improving testing and expediting software development. But if you are developing within the Ab Initio environment, there is no support for DevOps, barring you from Agile implementation. Similarly, business users developing applications within Ab Initio face limitations since they are dependent upon IT to perform their testing strategies, which can cause costly delays for implementing changes and validating business rules. Hello, and welcome to this Bitwise webinar, enabling greater efficiency in Ab Initio with continuous integration and BRE test automation. My name is Nathan Nichols, and joining me today is Nikhil Deshmukh, Vice President of Client Management here at Bitwise. Before I pass things over to Nikhil, we'll be talking about an approach to enabling greater efficiency in Ab Initio that reduces costs and speeds time to market. Let me first provide a quick introduction to our organization. Bitwise, a data management company, uses 20 years of enterprise data management experience to help bridge gaps between traditional EDW and cutting-edge technologies, including big data tools. We help organizations meet their enterprise reporting, analytics, and visualization requirements by providing complete end-to-end services for business intelligence, data warehousing, QA testing, big data, digital, and enterprise applications. What truly sets Bitwise apart is not just our 20 years of experience helping leading Fortune 1000 companies solve their most pressing data challenges, but our dedication to developing unique tools and methodologies that automate and accelerate complex processes. Bitwise builds strong partnerships with our customers, some of which are listed here, by providing data expertise, global delivery capabilities, and innovative solutions. At the end of this session, we'll open things up for an interactive Q&A. Feel free to send your questions via the question feature at any time during the webinar. We'll do our best to answer all questions, but as always, you can contact us at any time at sales@bitwiseglobal.com. And with that, I'd like to pass things over to Nikhil. Nikhil?
Hello, everyone. So to start with, I'm just going to give a quick introduction to myself. My name is Nikhil Deshmukh, and I've been part of Bitwise organization for 15 plus years. And most of this has been as part of a data warehouse expert. And in the recent past, I'm leading the Ab Initio practice. So to start with, the core of today's presentation, we are going to talk about how more and more organizations are trying to improve customer experience by making their products available on time, before time, and products that add value to customers. To make this a reality, organizations want to make sure that time to market is reduced by bringing continuous improvements. In addition to that, they're also giving continuous improvement a higher standard, and they're bringing it as close to any operational challenge as well as product innovation. So they are giving more investment to this approach and more importance also. To achieve this vision, organizations are looking at enhancing their agile practice by bringing in frameworks like Scaled Agile framework. The main improvement they want to introduce by getting this framework in place is to create value streams across organizations. So what I mean by value stream is that the value stream basically owns the program, which are very close to any organization. For example, acquisition, rewards, portfolios, etc. So the program has multiple projects. So the execution, delivery of these projects, it's completely owned by that value stream. So what happens is the decisions that are made by the value streams are at lower levels, quick decisions are made, and the time to market is reduced. To give a quick example, I'm currently working with one of a big Fortune 100 direct banking organization, which has businesses, line of businesses like credit line, banking, loans. So I've seen descriptive changes brought in these organizations, where they're creating value streams like acquisition and rewards that I already talked about. So giving an example, a value stream for acquisition goes from web applications where it captures data for new new customers, then when the processing moves to mainframe platforms, or it can also be on an Ab Initio platform. And then finally, the KRIs and KPIs are calculated, and then the scores are done through a scoring application where they decide what the credit line would be for the customer, what would the reissue date, how secure is the customer, and this all they do by looking at the credit scores, credit information, the loans they have, and all this information. So what the value stream does, it owns the entire process from end-to-end process. So they know exactly what is been introduced in the flow, what is new attributes that are required to make the customer experience more valuable, and they also own the resources that are part of each and every aspect of this value stream. So there is no priority conflicts within the different units. So that's the idea behind the value stream. I just wanted to quickly share with this group. And this is the need of the hour that I'm talking about, that I'm seeing at multiple customers. But the dilemma that we also see, and Bitwise as a consultant working with different customers and also different customers themselves, is that the tools that are being used by the different teams within the value streams do not align with the continuous improvement process. So basically, they don't have out-of-box solutions to enhance their CI processes. And this is where the vision for the organization kind of breaks, because all the tools within the value stream do not have that capabilities. So in today's presentation, what we are going to do is we are going to address two subject areas or limitations that we are enhancing with our workarounds or frameworks that sit on top of this existing capabilities. So one of the solution that I'm going to talk about is how to make Ab Initio capable enough to be part of a CI or continuous improvement, continuous integration framework. The second area that we are going to address is Ab Initio's business rules engine. We know that it does have capabilities to enhance the business users to make their own business rules, test them, validate. But it is not conducive right now. There is a lot of technical needs that the business user have to learn to really use the business tool. So what our framework does, it sits on top of it and addresses all the challenges that the business users are facing to make it more conducive and help them adopt it more widely across organizations. So this is the overall introduction on what we are going to address today. So moving on to the next slide, we'll dig deeper into each section of the presentation. So as part of the first section of the webinar, we are going to showcase some workarounds and frameworks to help make Ab Initio code continuous integration enabled. Most of us know what are the benefits of CIR, which is primary reason why most of the organizations and our customers are investing heavily to make this happen. But to summarize on a high level, CI helps to detect issues earlier, in most cases during the unit testing. And what it does, it reduces the overall time for the integration as well as the user acceptance test, which finally results into the project being delivered on time with less testing iterations. So we all know testing overruns always happen. So how do we make sure that we reduce the overall impact? So that's the vision that we want to bring in with this framework that we have introduced to some of our customers. So currently, Ab Initio does not provide an inbuilt capabilities to help integrate testing with CI pipeline. There is no automatic testing. For example, when Ab Initio code is pushed into or into their version control, it does not kick off a testing cycle. So that is currently not available. So our framework wraps around that limitation and primarily will help to automate that process. So in the next slide, what I'm going to do is show how we have used some external components of software or plugins to make the CI testing process automated in Ab Initio. This framework is extensible because you can add n number of test cases on the framework. So this is a general life cycle of a project in any data warehouse or Ab Initio environment. So before we start going into the process itself, let's talk about a couple of things that we have added to the ecosystem. One is the Jira software. The main feature of Jira software is it's an agile software development application which helps with the task development task iterations. It helps with reports on the task level and also helps in a bug tracking functionality. The other tool that we have introduced here in the ecosystem is the Jenkins orchestration server, primarily to kick off scripts or test scripts to automatically test the code that is released into the test environment. So let's start with the process itself. Like any given process, the first thing that starts is the business users, which basically set up the business requirements. These requirements are given to the business analyst, who primarily create the pseudocode, which convert the business requirements that are in a layman's language into a pseudocode that the development team understands. One example of a pseudocode or a document is a source to target mapping, where it talks about the source attributes, the target attributes, and the transformation that need to be applied on the source, primarily to either aggregate the data, to create KPIs, KRIs, and other attributes that the business need. So this is one of the example of a document that the business analyst creates. Once it completes that task, the business analyst updates the Jira task, and on completion of the task for the business analyst, two teams take over from there. One is the development team, and the second is the testing team. As part of the framework, the development team starts coding and creating graphs out of the source to target maps. So that's one of the artifacts that it releases to code. On the other side of the coin, the testing team starts creating test scripts, which are primarily PSETs, which point to the different types of test data, which are used to test the different scenarios that the business want. The other thing that the testers do is they create SQLs, which are primarily embedded in run SQL components within Ab Initio test graphs, which basically test table loads, test other aspects of the table that needs to be checked for the business. For example, whether the aggregation of a certain attribute is done, whether the total transaction volume or amount for a set of transactions is equal to the aggregated value in another summarized table. So these things are done through SQLs that the testers create. The other responsibility of the testers is to create test data, which is used during the integration as well as the user acceptance phase. Once all these artifacts are ready, the development graph, the testing graphs, they all are released or checked into the Ab Initio's version control called as the EME, Enterprise Meta Data Environment, under one tag. So once that is done, both the development team as well as the testing team complete their task within the Jira. So that once both the tasks are completed, the framework or the Jira triggers a remote connection with the Jenkins server using some of the plugins called as the Jira Trigger plugin and Webhooks plugin. What it really does, it kicks off a process on the Jira server remotely and passes the tag that is of the application that needs to be tested on the server. The Jenkins server, a remote set of scripts are kicked off within the Jenkins server. The first step of the script is to basically connect to Ab Initio test server using a plugin for SSH remote connectivity. The first step, once this connection is established, Jenkins server has a set of scripts. The first part of the script is to check out the code on the test server from the EME using the tag that was passed on from the Jira to Jenkins. Once the objects that need to be tested are checked out, the next step our framework runs through the dependency analysis. The dependency analysis basically runs the dependency analyze script on the application to validate the data lineage and make it AME compliant. And basically not make it AME compliant, but ensure that it is AME compliant. The main reason why we have done this, and this is based on our feedback from a lot of customers who are more of a banking customers, that they need the data lineage as part of a regulatory requirement, that all the attributes which are high-risk attributes need to have data lineage that shows them how the attribute is moved from the source to target, what are the different transformations applied on the attributes, and how the data is being massaged or transformed till the end destination. That's the main reason why we have incorporated the dependency analysis as part of the framework. Next, it moves on to our next framework, which is called as a validation framework, which sits on top of Ab Initio's capabilities of validation extension. In this part, what we do is we validate all the best practices that an organization or a customer has set up by their center of excellence. Few of the examples that I can give you is consider an application that is reading file from a mainframe. The basic standards for a mainframe file is the name cannot extend more than 44 bytes. So this validation can be put into the validation framework to make sure that when a code is released, the mainframe file name cannot exceed more than 44 bytes. This is one of basic validation, but we can also have validation framework check for best practices like consider a developer who has developed a graph with a replicate component, and he has a sort component after the replicate immediately. So what it does, it basically copies multiple sets of data, similar sets of data on the disk itself. The ideal optimized solution would be to move the sort component before the replicate so that only one set of data is copied to the server. So this validation can also be implemented and made sure that such code is not moved into production, which is not optimized at all. And the validation framework is extensible. You can have n number of validations that can be added in the background. So each time a new validation extension is added, the code that is released in the CI process keeps on checking that regardless of who releases the code or when this code was released. So this covers the basic test cases on the dependency analysis and the validation framework. Then we move on to more logical test cases. In this case, the first test case that we have introduced as a framework is to run through the application using empty files. What it does is the empty files basically check for all the attributes. If the attributes are moving from the start of the application to the end of the application properly, the data formats are correct across components, the transformations are applied correctly. So this basically checks the basic runtime errors that can be captured in this test. The next, basically what we do is we use the p-sets that point to multiple sets of data files to go through different scenarios that are required for the business users. So in this way, we can add multiple test cases in the framework. So that makes the framework more extensible. And what we have experienced is that most of the unit test cases do capture a lot of defects that would have been captured later on in the integration or the user acceptance test. As the unit test is completed, we do run through the integration test, in which case the application is already added to a plan in Ab Initio plan application, and it runs through a multiple set of applications. For example, in a warehouse, the data flows from the source to staging and staging to EDW. So all the application that covers this multiple sections of the data warehouse application process can be sequentially added to the plan within Ab Initio, and we can run the plan as one set of test case. Then we move on to the user acceptance test, where the only difference between integration and user acceptance is the data that is being used for the user acceptance is different. Primarily, this is the data that is created by the testers looking at the requirements of the business, and as they want to cover all the scenarios that the business want to validate. So finally, once the unit test, integration, and user acceptance is completed, then basically if there is an issue or error in any test cases or any test case failed, then it is captured by the Jenkins, and either it is moved back. If it's a failure, then it is moved back to the Jira, and the test case that is associated with the application is reopened. Or if it is a success, then it is marked complete. But in either case, we have integrated we have captured and integrated it with a reporting dashboard that shows exactly how many test cases were complete on each application. It also tells which is the test case that failed, so that it helps the developer as well as the leadership to gauge the total success rate of the testing. So this is one of the key subject areas that we wanted to talk about, which will enhance. One thing is that it will make Ab Initio compliant with the CI process, and it will also enhance the CI process to make sure that the vision that the customers have to reduce the time to market basically materialize the vision. The other solution that I wanted to talk about is a subject area that basically talks about how Ab Initio environment can be made self-service for the business users to test the business rules. So Ab Initio talks about making the business users purple. What they really mean is they want to make the business users who know the functional knowledge, which they call as the blue people, and they also want to make them little technical, which they call them the red people, which are the development team. So they want to merge and create a hybrid business users called as purple people who can test their own, write their own test cases, test their own test cases, and validate their own test cases. So primarily to reduce the overall life cycle of the testing process. So before I move on to the framework that we have introduced that sits on top of the Ab Initio capabilities, I want to quickly go over a life cycle of a traditional project. So as a first step in any project life cycle, the development team basically asks the business users to write a specification document that talks about the business rules. So what they really are talking about here is they are asking the business users to write a pseudocode, which is something that the business users are not comfortable with. So what the best what they do is they write a specification document with all the information, and they hope that the the development team can understand what they are writing about. The development team basically takes this specification document, it translates into the code, does the testing, and then during the UAT phase, the business users validate the results and outcomes. At that point in time, they realize that the transformation rules are not working as they want them to work. So what they do is, and this might be because of two reasons. One is the specification that were written by the business users were not correctly coded, or they were not written correctly by the business users. In either case, what happens is the life cycle of code to test to release, the iterations for this increases, and basically it reduces the increases the testing life cycle and increases the project timelines. So this is what happens in a regular life cycle. So what we really want, we want an environment which will help the business users to write test case. We want an environment the business users can test it, And also we want an environment that the business application can convert these test cases into code. So this is possible with business BRE of Ab Initio. But there are few other things that need to be put into place for the business user to really accept or adopt this framework. So this is what we are talking about, the framework that we created on top of BRE that is helping it. So in our framework, what we have done is we have separated the the entire transformation and business rule implementation or BRE into two sections. One is the business user, which owns the rules, and the developer who sets up the environment for the ACE templates, which gives the business users an environment to code the test cases or write the test cases or write the business rules, test the business rules and validate it. The developers also provide a test bed architecture for the business users to test their data against the business rules. So this can be as per the customer's need. If the business users need more frequent data, then the framework can be set up to create data weekly, monthly, as per the needs. But what it also gives is it gives the flexibility for the business user to choose the data. So they can choose the data by volume, 20% of the production data, 30% of the production data, or they can choose the data by the type of data. They can select account numbers, or they can select data based on specific conditions like give me all the account numbers that are closed, something like that. So that's the flexibility we can produce to give them. The other thing that we have in a framework is ability to refresh the reference information by the business users by themselves. So there is an upload facility that we have given, which they can upload reference information. For example, a business user is testing a rule against a transactional file, which primarily looks at reference information. But if the reference information is not up to date, then if they're looking for a set of transactions for a certain code, then they will never see the rule correctly applied. So that's the other facility in our framework that we are given to upload reference information and refresh reference information by the business users themselves. So this gives an overall self-service environment for the business users and makes them more efficient. So in summary, what we are trying to say here is that it all ties back to the need of the hour that we have discussed earlier, that organizations want to reduce the time to market. And so hopefully the two frameworks that we talked about has helped you to understand that subject matter. I'll hand it over to Nathan now.
Great, thanks Nikhil. And thank you for joining us today for enabling greater efficiency in Ab Initio with continuous integration and BRE test automation. Stay up to date on the latest information at bitwiseglobal.com or contact us at sales@bitwiseglobal.com with any questions.